Hey, what's going on, my friend? Welcome back to the show. Today, I have an exciting opportunity for you to get behind the scenes in the world of AI. I'm not just talking to someone who's using AI, I'm talking to someone who's developing and has patents in the field. His name is Manoj Agarwal, and the conversation is absolutely fantastic. He brings it down to the everyday person so that you can understand exactly what's happening, what the opportunities are for you, and how you can get positioned to take massive advantage for this technological transformation that's happening right now. I hope you enjoy the show. Manoj, what's going on? Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, excited to be here.
I am as well. You have a topic that I know everyone listening to this is they're seeing it all over the news. They're seeing it in their inbox. They're seeing it on social media. But the reason why I loved to want to have this conversation with you is that you're not just out here pontificating about what's going on in the world of AI. You have 4 patents in AI. And so before we jump into that and really uncover what the dynamics are with the economy and with technology and with society, because I think you got a ton to share, let's have you introduce yourself to the audience and just set some credibility in place before we get into this, so they'll stick around for this
Sure,
conversation.
sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Well, I'm one of the global thought leaders in AI with 4 patents. I worked with hundreds of startups, helping them build their technology. A couple of startups that we helped in the recent past, there were many more, but a couple of them just went public within 2 years and 5 years of us working with them. um, and the work that we have done, and then on the Fortune 500 side, we work with larger corporations as well. So companies like Microsoft, IBM, Pearson Education, with all these technologies and products that we have built, we have impacted over 10 million lives and produced
Mm,
over $500 million in value. So yeah, that's the fun part. My personal journey has been, I grew up in India, working in a factory, earning $2 a day, and from there, now working with some of the global brand names and celebrities and whatnot. It has been quite a journey, but technology and sort of looking for ways to improve things has always been a passion, and that has served me well. So that's what I share with people so that they can apply similar steps in their life or business and get the similar results that I've gotten.
mhm. Yeah, I love the homepage of your website says exponential growth,
Yeah, yeah,
backed by science and AI. And I am a growth driven person. In fact, my community is called Growth Driven Entrepreneur, right? And
mm-hmm.
my parent company is called Can I 365, which stands for constant and never ending improvement.
Yeah,
Obviously, 365 is, 365 days a year.
yeah, yeah,
So I loved the understanding of who you were before we even met. After your team connected with my team, and so when did when did the growth journey start for you? Not the technology journey, but talk about growth. And because when someone uses the word exponential growth, that's a different level of thinking.
yes, yes, yes. See, the interesting thing is, up till the age of like around 42, or I'm 48 now, about 42 or so, like I didn't know what was even possible for somebody to achieve in the world, specifically with my background and modest education I have and all of that stuff. But along the way, as you do, you meet certain mentors, certain people, who have who have uh, traveled to the places where you want to go, who have done the things that you want to do. And when you start to interact with those people, and then when you start to think about, okay, notice what are the things that help them get there, then all of a sudden new pathways open up. And that happened to me, as I said, around 5 years ago, when I realized that, okay, I have done a lot, I have achieved a lot, but I still did not feel satisfied. Like, after producing hundreds of millions for others, I was like, okay, why am I not satisfied? And when I started looking for answers, that's when the this notion of hyper growth came in, where
Mm,
I started realizing that a person, no matter what their background, no matter what their circumstance, can achieve worldly success, global success. That's when I started pursuing it, and of course it's a never ending process. But the boundaries become bigger, the possibilities become bigger, and when you can see that possibility, then the actions also become bigger.
mm, mm. Did you ever grow up with limiting beliefs about what was possible?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
$2
I
an
mean,
hour might have been
yeah,
might have been a start of that, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I mean, come on, like, when I think about those days, I laugh at myself. Like, even buying a pair of shoes was a yearly sort of celebration, like an event that happened in
Oh.
life. It's like, oh my God, uh,
Listen, wait. Listen, I
yeah,
don't want that to pass. I don't want that to
yeah,
pass. What you just said
yeah,
was okay. So $2 a day, just to
yeah,
restate that. Like my first job was $3.35 per hour.
yeah,
Minimum wage at that time in the United States. And you said buying a pair of shoes was a yearly celebration. I just want
yeah,
that. I want you to, if you're listening to this, let that sink in. And what I want you to take away from what he just said is no matter what it is you're going through, what it is you think your hardships are, have you ever had a day where celebrating a new pair of shoes a year was all you had to? I mean, it's just profound. I didn't want that because sometimes when I bring guests on this show who are ultra successful, and I am also in the same boat, I get the same sort of comments. And that is, they can only see the you of today who is quote unquote successful, who's quote unquote made it. But I want to draw the gap because the gap is it was $2 a day at one point to whatever it is today. And I just don't like to let those points
yeah,
slide on through because,
yeah,
you know, even you have laughed at, you look back and laugh, but back to the limiting belief comment, but you've laughed about it so hard that I knew it was there. And because
yeah,
as soon as I said it, you started laughing. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
some of the stuff we used to believe
yeah,
that held us back.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly, exactly.
yeah. When did you become a software engineer? Was that your study in school to be a software developer, software engineer?
No, so what happened was, as I was trying to figure out how to improve my life and get out of being able to afford more shoes, I thought, okay, hey, I need to have a skill that is more valuable.
Mm,
So in that search, I was just, trying to look for, okay, what could that be? And the internet and computers were very new. This is like 1993, 94, especially in a small town in India. So what happened was, I think in 94, a small computer institute opened up, and there was no university or like higher education in the small city that I lived in. So I said, okay, let me look into this computer thing, and I could not register myself because the fee was too high. It was more than my yearly income. So I said,
mm,
okay, I'll come back next year. I'll try to do something. So I saved up some money. I stole some money, and just did whatever I could uh, to pay for the fee for the next year. And I really got into technology. I was so passionate about it, and it turned out like I was really good at it as well. The final exams, I was ranked number 7 in all of India, and
mm.
that was the journey when it all started. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love what you just said too. Like I did whatever I could.
Yeah.
Um, I worked hard. I stole some money. You know what I mean? Some people don't admit stuff that they did in the past that they're not. You know, you look back and you're like, I can't believe I did that, but I
Yeah.
had to. I
Yeah.
had to. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, I
When
mean,
did?
that self acceptance and self awareness. I mean, it's not easy to admit all this, publicly now. But once you find that peace, that acceptance of yourself, that uh, I'm not going to be proud of that ever, or I'm not going to do these kind of things ever. But when I did not realize what I was doing, but I just had one focus, how to get out
Mhm.
of that situation. And
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people have to go through in life. Once you go through it yourself, you can also empathize with other people who had done these things. um, just a couple of months ago, I visited a maximum security prison, and the inmates had some programs to help them launch their businesses once they get out.
Mm,
And I met some people who had been in the prison for like 3 decades, and they haven't seen their grandchild. And so
mm,
it put a lot of things in perspective. Like, we all do certain things in life, and some people um, pay the price, and some people, like, it's a strange life, how it unfolds for us, right?
yeah, yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, it's so true. I mean, we can take it out of the world of prisons and
Yeah,
things that could leave you there, but we all in our car every day probably violate the speed limit,
yeah, yeah, exactly,
but
exactly.
we don't get caught, right?
Yeah,
So then the day that you get the ticket, it doesn't change the behavior the
yeah,
minute the
yeah,
cop pulls off, right?
yeah, yeah,
You
exactly,
know,
exactly.
now you do that too long and under the wrong circumstances and situations is when something tragic happens, right? So
Yeah,
it's the human experience, right, for us to break rules and do things. But again, to your point, it's that self awareness to come back and say, you know what, that
mm,
really wasn't the right thing to do, and I'm
yeah,
never going to do that again, right?
yeah,
So
exactly,
anyway, I
exactly.
appreciate your
Yeah.
transparency. I love that. Um, when did the world of AI really start to? When did AI first pique your interest to the point where you were like, this is an area of focus that is going to disrupt society, just or however you would describe it. I want to talk about when it first crossed your path, and then what I want to do for the listener who is not totally familiar with this. I want to really start at some basics and then accelerate
Sure, sure,
the
sure, sure.
conversation.
Okay, so let's talk about quickly the basics, because I think that'll provide some context to the conversation.
Got it.
See, the world around us is very complex, and the human mind is not able to really comprehend exactly what is going on. However smart we are, we miss 99% of the what is happening in our environment. So I'll give you a quick example. Let's say, a child, let's say a 7-year-old child touches a hot stove. They will only need to touch the hot stove once to realize that this is a painful experience. I shouldn't do that. So our human mind is a pattern recognition machine. It takes that one data point, and then now it understands this is not a good thing to do. But now let's put that 7-year-old child in the middle of Antarctica. There's wind blowing. The child may be wearing a heat-resistant gloves, and now the child touches the hot stove. It actually feels pleasant because of the cold weather. Now our
Sure.
mind picks up 3 or 4 more variables in the data, and then says, "Oh, okay, there's some nuance here." So I have learned another pattern, that if it's very cold and we are wearing some gloves and protection, it's okay to touch the hot stove, right? So the mind learns these patterns by observing this data from the world. But now let's extrapolate that to very complex problems. Let's say, finding cure for cancer, or predicting the weather in the next 15 days, or predicting the stock market. There are millions and millions and millions of parameters and variables involved in that computation, and human mind is not able to comprehend that. But the machines today can consume all that information, and with very fine grained precision tell you based on that data what is going to happen, right? So that is a superpower. Now, how did that come about? I've been working with data. Like, once you get into software and technology, you work with data a lot, right? And then, as I worked with the companies who were accumulating humongous amount of data, as I said, Microsoft and Pearson Education, I saw that data, when you process it in the right way, it can start to show you some patterns of human behavior, right? How many
Hmm.
people are buying this stuff? Where is the fraudulent activity? What can be predicted about the demand of a certain product based on historical data? All these things, of course, to the technical mind, it all sort of made sense in the engineering way, but it didn't make sense in the business way sense, until I started working on a project for personalized learning, where we were solving a problem where every student today in a classroom gets the same curriculum. But we know that human beings, some people are more advanced, some people need more help in a specific topic. So we solved that problem by providing personalized curriculums to every student in the classroom
Mm.
using AI,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And now it started to open up my mind that, okay, we all think differently, and AI is able to really equalize the field for everyone. The next thing that happened was, as I was going through my professional sort of success, I was suffering a lot in my personal relationships, and it was causing a lot of anxiety and depression. I was actually suicidal at one point.
Mm.
And then, to get out of that situation, I talked to therapists and psychologists and whatnot. What finally helped me was meditation, which really helped me to dive into my own subconscious mind, learn about how we create our own reality. And now I experience my own mind from a different perspective. And then once you overlap all this with artificial intelligence, now I see that, hey, AI is not only going to automate a lot of the things, but it can actually help us explore our own mind, expand our own mind,
Mm.
because that is the way that our mind and AI interacts. It's actually the continuum on the same plane. So that these realizations, as they started happening, then that's when I started realizing how powerful this technology is, and what is it that we have in store for the future as AI gets adopted more and more in every aspect of our life.
Yeah. I love that. That the breakdown of that was really, I think, easy to understand and digestible, right? The analogy of the 7-year old who touches the stove, but they have singularity of context.
Yeah.
And then you insert these additional variables. So I love the fact that, because that's really life, right? Like a lot of us want life to be very binary,
Mm,
very yes no, very zero sum game, and that's just not how any of it works. But our brain does a great job, right? Our human brain does such a fantastic job of filtering the things that are not necessary. So
exactly.
therefore, we're left to not have to handle those variables. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's interesting. I love how you broke that down. Um, given the fact, given the fact that we as humans don't love change, and this
Yes.
is not just a change with AI, because if you think about,
Mm,
I was in an Uber ride about 3 years ago, and I rode next to this guy. I dropped my car off at the service place for the
mm,
dealership, and I rode in this Uber with this guy back to my office, and he was on his way
mm,
back to his office. Happened to be, our offices were about a mile apart,
mm,
and he had spent some time at Tesla, and he had also spent some time working for another company that did self-driving software. So
mm,
Tesla was one. Then he worked at a different,
mm,
and that's where he was currently at the current company, was this other competing self-driving software. Anyway, he said to me, and I'll never forget this conversation. This is a 15-minute ride, 20-minute ride, maybe. And he said, in the next 3 to 5 years, we will see the greatest collision of new technologies. The fastest it'll be, like, and we always like to say the first time in history, or
yeah.
unlike anything in
Yeah.
history. Well,
Yeah.
everything's unlike anything in history,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm seeing it, and this is where the question's coming from.
Mm,
So we got AI, we've got self-driving cars, we've got crypto and DeFi, and all of the new things happening in the world of finance, whether you find it or not, NFTs, whether you follow it or
mm,
not.
mm,
Digital landscape is like, we're consumers now, holding the most powerful computers in our hands
mm,
versus the ones
mm.
we used to use on our desk. This is scary for a lot of people. Talk to us
Yeah.
about what you're seeing and what you're hearing about what humans we are afraid of. And I don't know how the context would be, but you and I are business owners, entrepreneurs,
Sure. Sure.
investors, etc. But talk it all the way down to, what is the average person most afraid of about
Yeah.
AI?
See, there are two main fears I'm hearing. One is that it is going to take away my job, right? So that is true to certain extent, but the idea here is to realize that AI is not going to take away the job. It's a person who understands and uses AI effectively will take away the job. Because what will happen is, let's say you have been tasked. I mean, let's say this is pre machines. So let's say his, you're living in a cave, and you're a caveman, and you have been tasked to kill uh, a large animal so that you can feed your family for next 30 days. I mean, you can use brute force methods, and uh, sharpen a couple of spears and try to hunt an elephant. Or you can think strategically, come up with a plan to roll down a big rock, use mechanics and science to kill that big animal. Now if you're able to succeed, then your family feeds for next 30 days, without any hassle. You are secured, you are becoming more productive. And now if we just extrapolate that to current environment, if a person is able to do their job 100 times faster and 100 times more accurate, obviously that person will become more competitive, employable. Not only that, but um, here are my predictions, that based on the way that things are moving, entrepreneurship actually is going to become the number one profession, because
Mm,
people will be able to run their own businesses without hiring, because salaries are the biggest,
100%.
uh, salaries are the
Biggest line
biggest
item.
expense.
Biggest line
Yeah.
item. Yep. Biggest line
And
item on the payroll. Yeah, is
payroll,
payroll.
on our balance sheets and profit and loss statements. And now, in the next 7 years, I can predict that there will be public companies listed on stock exchanges with one employee, which is the CEO. Everything else,
Wow.
everything else will be done by AI.
Wow. And you know what? I actually would I don't that's profound just to even think about it. But I do believe that even if you thought about software and just think about typical marketing automation software and automation in general. Um, Today we have so much of it, right? I can wirelessly turn my camera on and off that's on my house. I can wirelessly turn or through Bluetooth turn on my lights if I want to. So if we look at just automation and all of the places that's shown up, and certainly we're not just talking about automation, but I actually think that that statement is actually a real statement. Now, publicly traded, that seems pretty interesting to me, but it's possible. It's possible. I want to go back to the thing you said because I've been saying it myself since I gave this talk to my team at the beginning of the year, and I said this was when ChatGPT came out, and I have kind of a rule of focus, and it's my own personal rule of focus, and that is if 3 to 5 of my close friends or peers that I admire don't seem to talk to me about this new thing, then I don't pay attention to it, even if it's exciting. So I have a circle. Everybody has a circle of people that they won't come to you unless they know where you are and what you should be thinking about. So I got that 3 to 5 rule got tripped. Like that rule got
Mhm.
tripped in late December, and it was about ChatGPT. And I had been dabbling with AI tools. I've been dabbling with some other stuff, but when that came out, I had 3 to 5 people, whatever. My rule got tripped, and I was like, I was supposed to take a little vacation,
Mhm.
and I canceled it wasn't a canceled vacation like a family trip, but I was supposed
Mhm.
to take some time off and just chill at the end of the year.
Mhm.
And I decided, oh, that rule got tripped, so I better pay attention.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I said the same thing to my team at the beginning of the year, and I said, listen, you need to go all in on learning what's going on with ChatGPT and all of the things. And I said, it's now a 3 alarm fire, so to speak, meaning it's real now, folks. It's absolutely real. Then Google came out with Bard, which they had in their pocket the whole time. They were waiting for another formidable competitor. Probably they waited too long because now I think they're behind. But I also think they had a second motivation, which is not for this conversation, but that is, I think risk, it could put some risk on their business model, being an ads business. But anyway, I love what you said about it's not AI itself that's going to take your job. It's the fact that someone who's using it effectively to be more efficient, to be
Mhm. Mhm.
more productive, to get more value to the company, right? The number
Exactly.
one reason when layoffs happen, everybody doesn't get let go. It's the people
Mhm.
that they've deemed are least valuable.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
doesn't matter how many years of service. And I hate to say it, some people don't want to hear it, but I learned this many years ago in my 20s. They said, you want to know how you don't get fired during a layoff? Is be more valuable to the organization that if they let you go, they would actually feel something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And it doesn't mean be the most best person in your department, you know, it's be the best person in your department and then figure out where else you can help out and be more versatile. So
Yeah,
anyway, I love it. Um,
yeah.
I got to pick your brain. What are the top three AI tools? I know you're a developer, so it's probably, but do you have tools that you use? What are the top three tools that you're finding yourself most paying attention to today? And they may be higher level than some of what my audience is listening to, but what are the things that got your mind, your attention right now?
Well, right now, what we do is when these kind of technology waves happen, it's much better to stick with the big players. So we are
Got it.
working with OpenAI, we're working with Google Bard, and then what we do as a company, we realize that this technology is so big that people find it like drinking from the fire hose. So what they will
Mm,
need is specific personalized solutions. So we build personalized enterprise chat GPT. So for example,
yeah.
let's say you are running your company, you have years or decades of experience in your industry. How wonderful will it be that you can offload all your knowledge into a repository, and your employees can ask questions and it will answer as if you are personally coaching them, right?
Mm,
And you can expose that to your customers and say, okay, let's get rid of the simple FAQs, but I am making myself available to you now, and you can talk to me, and this AI will help you uh, understand who I am, what my company does, how we service our client, or any sort of question that come to mind. So these are the kind of solutions that we are building because we
mm,
see that's what we will. So just like, and again, I try to use analogies from the past because the time always repeats, right? So think of when the internet came out. Internet was a highway on which we built a lot of these
yes.
applications, right? The
Yeah.
internet itself is free, right? So if you look at AI, Bard is free. I mean, AI will be free as a platform. What you do on top of it, you build solutions for specific industries, specific businesses. That's what is going to happen. That's what we are involved in.
I love it. Let's talk about a couple of two or three use cases that are broad enough for almost any business to think about. You just brought one up, which is I'm assuming some sort of chatbot or knowledge based tool. Let's
Yes,
talk
yes,
about
yes.
two or three real applications because whether they're building it from scratch, but just getting their mind to say, how could this actually help us save costs? How could this actually cut our overhead? How could this make us more profitable? How could it make us more efficient? Because that's the way I've been thinking about it.
Absolutely.
And that is, as a business owner, especially if you're an entrepreneur listening to this show, your job is to make sure the company is profitable. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
even to your customer, it's your job to make sure you're as profitable as possible so you can be there to serve them with the product or
Yeah.
service that you offer. So your job as a CEO, founder, or someone running growth, it's your priority to make sure that you're profitable. And so talk about a couple, two or three ordinary use cases, if not, just to open their mind about what's possible.
That's a great question. See, the thing is that as business owners, we know one thing. Once you become experienced in business, that our growth is limited to our team, right? Who's on our team? What is their passion? What is their talent? All of that stuff. Now, let me ask anybody listening to this: if you're a business owner and tomorrow you find an employee who has a PhD in sales, PhD in marketing, PhD in operations, PhD in all of these subjects, philosophy, ancient history, blah blah blah, and they are always available 24/7, and they are ready to do whatever job you assign them to the perfect sort of guidelines that you put forward, how will that impact your company? Right? So you will have
Mm, yeah,
an amazing sales department, amazing marketing department, amazing operations department. It's the same thing that I'm trying to extrapolate by saying, if you think about these things today, in 7 years you can actually have a company with one employee which is listed on a stock exchange, right?
wow, wow, that's big. That's big. So, and everybody knows in the world of, and I look, I was an employee before I was an entrepreneur. So
Hmm.
I'm not knocking what I'm
Hmm.
seeing in the world of talent and employment, but I will tell you that there seems to be a misunderstanding as to what the gap of what you just said is profound. Like the best human, the best talented, most dedicated person is almost no match for a properly tuned, well organized, well structured, well thought out, de- intentionally designed tool to execute at a higher level.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I listened to a Stanford doctor, and I can't call his name. He's on staff in Stanford, and he said something about, and I'm going to paraphrase and see if I wanted your take on it. He talked about again the difference between us as human and our capability and the AI, and he said that AI is good from one and on. Humans still bring 0 to 1.
Yeah, yeah,
And so when I was in my car, I was listening to this podcast, and I played it a couple of times after it was a very short clip. It wasn't that long, but he said from 0 to 1, we still have the advantage. But from one forward, meaning the execution of one and beyond, is where AI has its power. So, what are your, and if you're listening from Stanford, I apologize. I don't remember your name. I'm sure I can find the YouTube video. I'm
yeah.
going to link it up in the show notes. But do you agree with that sort of hypothesis, that statement that that's where our value is
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
0 to 1 thinking? Talk about that.
yeah. You see, uh, the humans, live in the world of imagination. Whatever you have seen around us, we have imagined. Some human has imagined and then figured out a way to say, that will be cool to do, man. Let's figure out how to get to, this point. Let's print books. Let's create an oven, or let's create a rocket to get to space. These are the imaginative things that happen in somebody's mind, and then they said, okay, what do we need to get there? Let's put it all together. Now that is 0 to 1 that machines are never going to be able to do.
Mm,
Right, there is no
yes.
motivation for a machine, and this is another fear that people have. Oh, AI is going to take over humanity, and it'll start killing people and Terminator style and all of that. But the people don't realize that the realm of imagination and adventure and exploration, that's the realm of humans. That's never gonna become a realm of machines. They have no motivation to discover new things. you know all you need to do is unplug it, and it loses all its energy and
Power.
power,
Yeah,
right?
it loses its power. So we're not at risk of an iRobot situation where it violates the three
No, no, no,
laws.
no, no. The funny thing is, a lot of people, when you say that, I tell them, these kind of things happen when you become self-aware and you start to war is a result of generations of trauma and generations of suppression and jealousy and hatred. So if people understand what a code is, what algorithm is, you people are not even, only maybe 1%, even 0.5% of the human population is self-aware of their own emotions. Let alone somebody will say, okay, I'm so self-aware and so in tune, I will create an algorithm to make AI feel these emotions over 200 years of suppression, and that will result in AI rising up against humanity. That's just
Mm,
absurd. It doesn't even like make sense when I
mm,
when we
mm.
look at what we are trying to imply here, right?
Yeah, interesting. So back to the question: what tools do you use?
Oh,
What are
okay.
you
So
using in your day to make your life better?
yeah, so as I said, so ChatGPT is number one tool that we use. We are using OpenAI APIs to create
Yeah.
more specific solutions. So, for example, we are working with a music school trying to teach music using AI. We are working with
Mm,
a healthcare company which is trying to diagnose problems before they happen. So, proactive healthcare rather than reactive healthcare using
okay.
AI.
Okay.
We have built systems to help students complete their degree programs without dropping out, because at least 30% of the students in higher education institutions, they drop out. of their degree program, because they find that they are the topics or the subjects they have picked, it is not of interest to them, or it is too difficult. So these kind of solutions we build based on our own knowledge about how AI can be molded to solve these specific problems.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Where should someone begin to obviously ChatGPT is open to everyone, it's free. There's a premium version, but it's free. Is and let me ask it a better question. ChatGPT, and I use it daily. Um, it still makes up things, or it still confuses the request. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a word floating around that's been floating around on the internet for a bunch of months now, talking about the new career path is prompt engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have my take on it, and I know
Mm-hmm.
that the better I ask and support ChatGPT, the better my 0 to 1 has gotten
Mm-hmm.
completely different in the last quarter than it did in late December and January. So my
Mm-hmm.
0 to 1 is where I'm focusing. But talk a little bit about what prompt engineering is to you. What does it mean to you? But more importantly, how does it apply to the people that are just starting to stick their toes
Sure,
in
sure,
this,
sure.
so it's not overwhelming?
The funny thing is, I don't think this prompt engineering thing is going to last long time. So basically, what it is when any human being is presented with a complex technology. Let's say I'm put in the cockpit of 747 and I'm asked to fly that plane from New York to London. I will have no idea even where to begin, right? I'll have
Correct.
to I'll have to figure out, okay, what is the button I need to press? How do I interact with this machine to make it work? I know it works, but I don't know how to make it work. And that's what prompt engineering is, meaning somebody has been given access to ChatGPT and now they need to get value out of it. They just don't know what to say to this AI to get the right output. But the thing is that if AI, if we look at the promise of AI, it is to remove thinking altogether from from our existence.
Mm,
Thinking is what causes a lot of problems. Even you
wow.
go back to Buddha. Buddha's messages. All suffering is because of attachment. And attachment is what thinking. So if the machine takes over the thinking part, then you're only left to do that imagining part, or whatever.
The
So
creative
prompt
part.
e-
Yeah.
yeah, so prompt engineering in the time being, until AI becomes so ingrained that we can actually like sort of share our thoughts with it clearly, unfiltered. In that Until then, you will need some training or help to interact with AI, and that's what the input is, and that's what it's called prompt. And now if people don't understand how to interact with AI, then you need these prompt engineers to help them. But
Yeah.
as I said, the idea is that this is a short term career, in my opinion, because
Yeah.
if it actually becomes a long term career, I think that defeats the purpose of AI in the first place.
Wow. That's interesting. That's interesting. I love the way you closed that. That was
Yeah.
it defeats the purpose of AI in the first place. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Awesome. So much Manoj, so much stuff we could unpack. Talk to us about to the extent that you can. You have 4 patents. What are they about? Like what do they do?
Yeah. So one patent was, as I mentioned earlier, about personalized learning. So curriculums that, let's say you have a class of 30 students. If a student is very proficient in a topic, they'll get less material to read through, and if somebody
Mm,
needs more help, they'll get more material. So that way, everybody learns at a similar pace. So that was one patent, and three patents are on a technology that we created to help joint pains. So a lot of people have joint pains because of the way their feet are constructed. And so with 3D printing and AI, we created custom orthotic devices which fit within 2 millimeters of accuracy of your foot. And this technology actually got white labeled by a $43 billion company, and they sold it under their brand called Dr. Scholl's. So, so
that's not a very big brand, is it?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, these are some of the patents.
Gotcha. You have a podcast. I'm sure you talk a lot about some of these topics on your podcast. Tell everybody about your podcast.
Yeah, my podcast, it's called Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. So what I try to do is talk about similar sort of life journeys where people went from, um, you know, people went from uh, underdogs to top dogs, basically, because I find there are so many people with so much potential in this world, and just like me, somebody sort of helped me realize the potential that I had. I want to share with the world all these stories so that mm, somebody somewhere listening to one of these stories can be inspired and sort of really make an impact on the world as they can.
Yeah, such a rich opportunity we have to turn on a microphone and have a conversation. I'm blessed. You're in Vancouver. I'm down here in Vegas. We connected through an email, and now we've had a really nice conversation about this AI topic. And you're a true expert at this game, right? There's a lot of things that people are going to do to monetize what they think they know about AI. I am not selling an AI thing in my company. I'm in the grit of it every day as a user of technology, and it is intriguing to for me to think about where application lies truly in the expansion. To go back to something you said before, which is in 7 years or so, predicting that there will be publicly traded companies on the stock exchange with one employee, and that's the CEO. I think that's an interesting vision, and I'm holding on to that to think. Uh, how do you see yourself playing in that prediction coming to pass, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's the exciting part. The See, the thing is that once you have a vision about the future, you have no idea how things are going to unfold on day-to-day basis. The idea is to just swim upstream and see where it takes you. It's an exciting journey, and just like the change happens slowly, we don't even realize it. Like 5 years ago, if you ask somebody, in 5 years there's going to be a car on the street which will drive on its own, like, trust me,
Mhm.
it's going to happen, right?
Right,
People will say, oh no, yeah, what are you talking about, right? Like, no way it's going to happen.
right.
And in 5 years now we are there, and it happened, we didn't even realize it, like, it just happened.
Yep, yep.
I think in 15 years it actually is going to be illegal for humans to drive on the road.
I
so
agree. I agree.
so
I
so
say something very similar. I
hmm,
say I think in 10 to 15 years it'll be illegal for a human to touch a steering wheel,
yeah, exactly,
because if you
exactly.
touch it, you're going to make it worse than if you didn't
Yeah,
touch it.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So these things are these are tremendous opportunities. uh, According to some estimates, AI is going to add about $10 trillion to world GDP by 2030. So that's more than 10% of the current GDP in the next 7 years. So my role, it will be to share this opportunity with people and help them materialize it for their business, for their life, and along the way have lots of fun, lots build lots of new companies and lots of new products.
Yeah. And you said something earlier. I think that just want to finish on this thought. And that is, you said something earlier, which I loved as well, because I'm such a huge advocate of entrepreneurship. When I started entrepreneurship, it was like you were strange. Like when I in the 90s, like people looking at you like, what are you doing? Are you sure?
Yeah.
You're smarter than that. Like they didn't mean it with bad intent, but like you're
Yeah,
pretty smart. Like, what are you
yeah,
doing? You're leaving
yeah,
your job to do what?
yeah.
So anyway, but today you said something about this will be one of the greatest like rises of entrepreneurship because of the ability of technology. And you think about it, venture capital, it's not accessible for everyone. It's not accessible
Mm,
for all classes of society. It's if you're not in technology, generally they're not even thinking about putting VC dollars into you or even angel dollars or seed dollars. So this is going to be one of those leveling of the playing fields as kind of social media did, like with the world of content creation and media.
mm,
It's just continuing to disrupt. Leave our audience with a next step. They're listening to this. They're like, okay, I believe what this guy is saying. What is their next step? What is a practical next step, as broad and as general as you can give it, of
sure.
what someone listening to this should do to make sure that they are positioned properly for
Sure,
this
sure.
ever evolving technological, societal, economic shift in history? How do they
All
make
right.
sure that they take advantage of this?
All right. So I have 2 minutes before I have to jump on for the next call. Basically, you do two or three things, right? One, sign up for a free ChatGPT account. Then start getting better at asking good questions, because the people who ask good questions are the people who are going to look for those answers or surround themselves with people who can find those answers. And generally, we are never ever taught in our education system how to ask better questions. So that's number one. Secondly, use AI to tell better stories, because when you start answering those questions, you will need to become memorable for people who you are addressing, and
Hmm.
stories are the things that will make you memorable. Again, we are not told how to tell our stories, and
Hmm.
so tell better stories, ask better questions, and of course follow me on social media and learn more about AI. And once you do
Awesome.
that, I think you'll be all set.
All right. Manoj, where can they find you?
The best place is LinkedIn. Just let me know you heard me on this podcast, and what are you trying to do with AI? And
That's awesome. I'll make sure everything is linked up to find Manoj. Manoj, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy with your schedule. I appreciate you spending time with us here on the show today.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, hey, my friend, thank you for listening to today's show. I hope you got a lot of value and I hope you're ready to take action and make sure that you're in the middle of this happening called AI. If you're just getting started with ChatGPT, you should get started today. If you've heard about it, if you've played with it, if you didn't know how to use it well, think about what he said right at the end. It's all about asking good questions. We have put together a guide for how to use ChatGPT in your business, in your marketing, in your sales, doing some of the things that he talked about in today's show. We talk about it on a monthly basis because it is here to stay. I myself, we've cut hundreds of thousands of dollars in overhead out of our business just by starting to really understand how to fine tune this thing called AI. And specifically, we're working mostly with ChatGPT. So if you're interested in that, we'd invite you to come over to our community at growthdrivenentrepreneur.com. That's growthdrivenentrepreneur.com. Again, we're going to link up all the links to catch up with Manoj and all of his global work. And I just want to thank you for spending time with us today. Hit the like or follow button wherever you're watching this show so you never miss an episode. If you know someone who needs to learn about AI, forward this episode to them. We'd greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you next time. If you've never heard me before or met me before, I'm Daryl Evans. I'm the host, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Hit the subscribe button so you can become a part of the MindShift community. We'll help you shift your mind so you can shift your results.